Okay, folks, we're still tabulating questions here, but this is a time when we're going to ask our speakers to give us a summation or a closing statement from each of them. We're going to try and limit it to 5 minutes because otherwise we're cutting in a lot on our Q&A session. But anyway, you can speak from your seats there or you can stand up here, either way.
There are two things that I would like to finish up with because those are very commonsensical things. Yes? No. Oh. You mean I'm not heard? That's terrible. I would like to be heard. Is it better? Okay. This mic likes to be very close. There are two things I want to focus on in the couple of minutes that I will have now. One is this whole idea that we can have a set of common standards and that everybody in high school will finish college ready. It was never like this in this country. High school graduation was high school diploma. It didn't mean you're ready for college. But now suddenly, all the kids, all 100% of them, will be college ready. They will meet college readiness standards. And the government will watch you and monitor you and hold you accountable if not all of them are ready eventually. That's the idea. Well, think of that. Just common sense. Either the standards are not at the college level, and then, yes, 100% can meet them, or they are at the college level, and no, 100% cannot meet them. Or the college becomes not what it used to be. I mean, there's no other way. So by definition, this whole idea is preposterous, that you can have 100% of population college ready, no exceptions. Something has to give. Those standards have to be by definition mediocre. Otherwise, you will have massive failure tomorrow. But just think of it this way. The other thing is, and I am coming from engineering and sciences, and people like me kind of think, well, but what's wrong with having common things? I mean, why should there be 17 ways to do something? Why can't we have one way and just do it? What the big deal? And Bill Gates, in fact, said this much on the pages of the Wall Street Journal. Why do we have to have 50 ways to teach math or to do math or whatever he said? And I kind of initially said, yeah, right. And then hold it. Do we really know how to teach math? Everybody does it differently. And many of them are successful and many more are failing. You look at those A-plus countries. You look at Korea, you look at Japan, you look at Hong Kong, you look at whatever successful Asian tigers are. They don't have the same curriculum, they don't have the same way to teach math, but they are all successful. We had many states here that are successful. We have many states that have great standards and are not successful. We don't know how to do it. So believing suddenly that some organization in Washington will conceive this perfect set of standards that, just applying them and everybody will be successful. Are we crazy? Have we gone mad? We don't know how to do these things, and now we want to impose them on everyone? I will leave you with that.
We have a real problem in public education. That's why Common Core evolved from other efforts to address what we know are some problems with maybe uneven expectations, which is talking about school issues as opposed to beyond school issues. But we do have real problems, and the question is, what are ways of getting at what are the real problems? And I would like to suggest, and I've been trying to suggest, but nobody in the current administration at the federal level is interested, particularly in looking at the problems we have in teacher education, which are very different in other countries, but unless we can bring teacher education under better control, we will continue to have the same kinds of problems we have that have led to No Child Left Behind and now to Common Core. So there has to be a look at the training of teachers. They are very important, and most other countries make sure they get the best, the very top people from high schools. We have done the opposite. This was not so in the 19th century. We have looked, and some people I know have looked into the kinds of exams, the knowledge that we expected of teachers, K-12 teachers in particularly the elementary school in the 19th century. We've gone far from that process. We now need to make some major changes in who we admit, not only for teaching, but also for doctoral programs that lead to administrators and researchers and policymakers in education. And I have written a little bit about that, and we're only now beginning to look more, even lately, with this NCTQ report that came out looking at an evaluation of training colleges around the country, training programs and ed schools. So that's one major area. The other is, what do we do with young adolescents? Every country has the same kind of problem. They have, in many cases, if they're industrialized and can afford it, they offer choices of high school curricula. We are doing the opposite with Common Core. It wants to treat all high school students basically as the same. Even Little Finland, which has been in the news in the past few years as being a wonderful model, over 50% of their students, when they leave grade 9, which is the end of compulsory education in Finland, choose to go to a technical career or vocational training program. They can go on to post-secondary polytechnic institutes, but they do not choose to go to the academic high schools, which now have less than 50%, which have 8 different kinds of programs, courses or sequences or tracks in them, so that they have figured out, at least for their purposes, and they're not that satisfied with it, but the idea is, how do you capture the motivation of a 14 or a 15-year-old? And in most countries, they give them some kind of choice. We could do that. In Massachusetts, it turned out that we had 26 regional vocational high schools that now have waiting lists, because kids have learned that, and their parents support this, that they will leave high school with an occupational skill set that gives them the opportunity to earn a living, to go on if they want, and over half do, but they also get a high school diploma. Over 10% of our high school students now choose these high schools. More would if they were available. Current administration is not interested in them. But even a state like Idaho could have one specialized high school for math and science students, a specialized high school for performing arts. I'm interested in music in particular. But there could be specialized high schools across every single state that would relieve the problem for a, quote, Common Core. K through 8 can still be the basic literacy, math, and other subjects, history, but then let students have the kind of training they will commit themselves to, because we have found in Massachusetts that the attrition rate is less than 2% when kids choose the kind of high school they want to go to. So those are just ideas for how we address what remains as a basic problem.
Okay, very quickly, I wanted to just touch on the school choice thing. Common Core has the potential of really limiting the value of school choice, because the idea of Common Core is that eventually Common Core will encompass all of American education. It will be public school, private school, charter school, homeschool, everything. That's the goal. David Coleman, who wrote the English Language Arts Standards, is the head of the College Board now, and he says he's going to align it, as Michelle Malkin mentioned. If all the other tests are aligning with Common Core, then you have no choice. If you want your kids to go to college, you're going to have to teach this stuff. So this is why it's vital that we start getting states out of it, because the more states get out of it, the more likely it is to fail, the less likely it is they are to align with that. Just to touch on one of the reasons that is always given for Common Core is that we need national standards because the nations that do better than we do on international tests have national standards. Well, that's because most nations have national standards. There are nations whose kids do better than ours do that have national standards. There are nations that do better than ours do who do not have national standards, who have very decentralized systems such as Australia and Canada, but we don't hear about them. And also the nations that have national standards tend to be a whole lot smaller than we are, such as Finland. Everybody loves Finland for some reason. Well, Finland's about the size of Colorado. It's real different to have national standards in a country of that size with a homogeneous population than it is in a country the size of the United States. And so I would just mention also that when they say over and over this was a state-led effort, and we've shown that it was not a state-led effort. These were the people in Washington who were doing this. Even if it had been a state-led effort, so what? Why should New York get a vote on what Idaho children are taught? That should be an Idaho decision. It should not be a New York decision. You shouldn't have to. In Georgia, they keep telling us, well, we had a seat at the table. Well, we don't want the seat at the table. We wanted the table. And y'all should want the table as well. This is yours. And it's even worse than if this were a completely federal scheme. Because if it were just being run by the U.S. Department of Education, then at least you could call your senator and get something done about it. This is being run by people in Washington who are anonymous people in anonymous groups, and you don't even know who they are to call them and get something done about it. It's complete turning over control to people who just think that they're a lot smarter than you are, and they should be allowed to do this because they know better than you. So when has centralization worked in this country? Give me an example of when taking it away from the locality and giving it to the centralized smart people. When has that worked? I read a quote. This was attributed to Albert Einstein. I don't know if he said it or not, but I liked it. He said, "A problem cannot be solved by the same mind that created it." Centralization created these problems. They're not going to be solved by more centralization. Question was, did most of the problems start when the Department of Education was formed in 1979? Yes.
Thank you very much, panel. This has been an excellent presentation. I imagine most of you in the audience would agree. We appreciate very much your expertise in sharing. Yes. We asked for them to be passed left. Are there some that didn't? The truth of the matter is we're not going to have enough time left to cover all of them anyway, and so I might ask our panel if they'd be willing to let me type them up, and in your leisure time, when you have anything else to do, maybe you could respond to them for me. Yes?
Respond to them in writing. I'll try.
Well, over time. It's not going to happen fast. I know your time is in great demand, and that's why we're so fortunate to have you here. What we've done is we've selected those that we think we have enough time for today. Okay. Would you be surprised to find out that one of the most popular questions was how many state legislators are here today to hear the opposing viewpoint for Common Core? Would you stand up and be recognized, please? Yay! We just had a late arrival. We saw you earlier, Senator. We're just going to alternate questions, and you folks decide amongst yourselves who's most appropriate to answer them. You want to go first, or you want me to?
Well, just real quick, one of the questions, and I think this was asked a couple of times also out there, was, my kids usually tell me to be quiet. Could you add, how about a show of hands for the number of teachers here? Would the teachers that came mind raising their hands?
Very nice.
Good. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
First question is, what are the best places to go to research and study Common Core standards? Are there recommended resources available for alternatives?
Well, somebody mentioned, I think Michelle Malkin mentioned the Pioneer Institute that published a series of reports that are good starting point. I believe it's a good idea. I will send we'll collect a bunch of resources and pass it to Valerie, and maybe you will publish it later.
Yes,
So
they're on
that
the
might be
website.
enough.
They're on StopCom. The
Right.
resources are on stopcommoncore.com. All the Pioneer Institute reports are there, and if you go under Show Me the Evidence, you can see all those reports right there. Yeah.
We'll be sure to post a follow-up on the front page of our website, 912projectidaho.com. I imagine Stephanie will do the same.
Will parents be able to opt out of state testing and/or FERPA for the data mining?
We can't get.
Can people opt out of the testing or opt out of the data mining?
Well, there are people who are already starting to try to opt out of the pilot testing. We know that happened in South Carolina. They're in Smarter Balanced as well, and some of the parents were not letting their children take the test, which I think is a great idea. Just say, no, I'm not going to do this because I don't want my child's data going to the federal government. See what happens.
However, once your data is in the system, there is no way you can make the data not available to the consortium if you belong to the consortium. And if it goes to the consortium, there is no way you can stop it from going to Washington, because that's part of the deal the consortia have with Washington. So once it's in, it's out of your control.
There's a book also that just came out called Big Data. Came out a couple months ago, I think, and which is really interesting to read, but it talks about the opting out. It talked about the anonymization and how easy it is to discover who it is, even if it's supposedly anonymized. But they talked about, I thought this was very interesting, that even if you opt out, when you opt out, that leaves a data trail. So opting out also creates another data point on things. So the data is the whole issue it's one that I'm just really learning about, and I think that it requires a lot of research, and it's called Big Data. It's written by do you know who wrote this? Victor somebody, I can't remember. Big Data, how it is changing our lives, or something in our way of thinking, or something like that. But well, and that's, as long as, even if they have everything anonymized, somewhere there is this list of what numbers correspond to which names. And they are going to lose this. We know they're going to lose it. I mean, every day you read something in the paper about a bank or a store or insurance company or whatever that had a data breach. So we know what's going to happen. It's just a question of when.
Okay, next question. Are there disadvantages or difficulties to having higher expectations for your school than what Common Core expects?
Well, if you have higher expectation in school, obviously it's good in theory. In practice, we already mentioned, it's not only the higher expectations, but if you would be tested in particular way, it goes to the style of teaching, not necessarily the content. So that's one problem. Then, generally speaking, district superintendents are not great risk takers. That's the nature of the job. And sure, some of them, some principals will do the right thing and will offer some more opportunities. But this is sticking your neck out. How many will do? Some will, most will not. This is not a system for a few privileged. Some kids of parents that are pushing and providing extras will succeed, sure. But is the system built for them? Or do we want to have a system for them?
I would like to add that the element of choice has always been historically a very important part of think it's on, of American education. I guess I just have to have it closer. The element of choice. From the very beginning, kids could go to a public kind of school, they could go to private school, homeschooling was allowed. This is not true in every country in the world. We've always had these elements of choice. Now they've been expanded a little bit more with charter schools. But having lots of choice available for schools has been an enriching element in American history as far as our educational structure is concerned. And when our high schools were built, which was mainly towards the beginning, at the beginning of the 20th century, when the huge expansion in high schools started in this country, the idea was to offer different types of courses and sequences. What people became opposed to, and I would be opposed to, is slotting kids in certain ways, which is what a lot of this data tracking sounds like, that it intends to track kids for a workforce kind of opportunity. Whereas allowing kids to make free choices among the kinds of possibilities that you make available sounds more like the kind of limitless horizon, or the values that were part of the American education as it was conceived originally. And what this is now doing is closing that kind of possibility by saying that everybody must be tested together, for the most part as cohorts, kept together, and treated as if they are interchangeable.
All right. Are there any textbooks available that will be used in teaching to Common Core?
Actually, there's one being developed right now. Peter Wood is editing it. Pioneer Institute has asked for it, and he's now developing chapters that deal with the history and development. So whenever this book is ready, which may be in a few more months, this would be the first book on Common Core that I am aware of. There might be others coming out, but I don't know of any others.
Okay, I think the question was to teach to Common Core. What are the textbooks?
Oh, you mean to teach this to the standards?
In the schools.
Oh, yes, because all of the publishing companies have said they're all aligned.
In fact, this is a problem because everybody wants to be in on this game, so everybody claims he or she or they are aligned, and everybody slaps a label Common Core aligned. Some of them are decent textbooks, some of them are indecent textbooks. In fact, one of the problems and stupidities that if I had to do it, at least I would have done it better. I would trademark the Common Core logo, and I would say, okay, I will put together an institute to validate the textbooks, and if only then they can use the label. But they copyrighted them, which means nothing really in some sense, but they didn't trademark them. So anybody can slap a label, Common Core line, and anybody and everybody does.
Moving quickly along here, what is the bottom line motive for those advocating Common Core to implement it? If the goal is to reduce academic levels and develop students for the workplace, wouldn't it be better to increase academic levels for the workplace?
It's a very complex question. What is a workplace? There is actually a body here, what's the name of them, that basically categorizes the various jobs in the economy into different levels, and there are like 4 or 5 levels, and for certain levels you don't even have to just finish elementary school maybe, or high school, not even finish, and so on and so forth. So when you say workplace, it means anything. You have to be more specific. Some jobs require college education. Other jobs require high school education. In recent years there was a pitch that, more and more jobs require college education. It's not so clear, especially in this economy. You look suddenly and you say, well, the jobs that are offered are not necessarily the college jobs. So it's a mixed bag, and you have to focus on what you're trying to offer. And it's not clear, in fact, that the same set of standards can be career and college ready at the same time. Nobody knows it. In fact, there was a body in Washington that researched this question for the NAEP, for the National Assessment of Educational Progress, whether they can have a test that will be college and career ready indicator, and the answer came, we have no idea, we have to research it. But then came the Common Core and just declared, oh, these are college and common ready. They didn't ask the colleges, they didn't ask anybody, they just declared it. And now, we're there.
Two more. We only have time for two more.
Okay, this question is how will, it says, it seems that to me that Common Core state standards will have a profoundly negative impact on homeschooling. How do you see this happening, and private schooling also?
Yeah, because primarily they're wanting to enforce it, I think, through the college entrance test, through SAT and ACT. So that'll be the main thing, although I know in homeschooling as well that a lot of homeschool curricula are now starting to say that they are going to align to Common Core. Where I was talking with one of our state reps in Georgia last week about this, and he's a homeschooler, and they went to some seminar, and there was this big presentation made about how this great new homeschool curriculum that was going to be Common Core aligned, and they said, well, we're not interested, and they left. But that's the idea, because people are buying the snake oil, as Sandy says, that even the homeschools, the Catholic schools, are some of them are starting to adopt this stuff because they're buying it. They're saying, well, we have to be as rigorous as these new rigorous standards, because everybody's just assuming that because somebody says they're rigorous, they are. And so some of the homeschool curriculum are going that way. Some of the Catholic archdioceses are going that way. And it's based on nothing other than just swallowing the marketing line, essentially. But primarily the way they're going to do it is through the college entrance test.
Okay, last question we have time for today. Would you let the audience know a little bit more about the next generation science standards, if you know about them yet? Indications here are that in this question is that they're being accepted into Idaho's Department of Education. I am not sure that commitment has been made yet, so that statement might be a little premature, but do you have anything that might be shareable yet on science?
I would just say a little bit more than what I said before, but anyone who's interested in, and I don't know the condition of your current science standards, but I can't imagine that there would be any gain in rigor, academic rigor, if you adopted this next generation set of science standards. And the best thing is to look at the review by this group of scientists that did the report for the Fordham Institute, and it came out within the past month or two. They looked at each of the different sciences and are giving it a very mediocre, low grade, and saying that people at the college level should look into what's there, because high school science will be totally changed by these kinds of standards because of what kids will come with from K through 8 into high school science. I don't know if you have more to add.
Well, just a couple of pieces of information. The next generation science standards were developed in a bit different process than the math and ELA standards. So here there was an explicit effort to engage many states so they will have a stake in it, because now the cat was out of the sack, so that they didn't have much to lose, but they wanted to have a buy-in early on. Consequently, many states essentially pre-committed again to adopting them, because now they truly actually participated, but in a sense that it was done by a group of 2, 3, 4 people from each state. It was mentioned earlier on, very early in this day, that the way the process goes in every state, you bring it out for public review, and typically twice, one before it goes to a committee, then before it goes to the full body of law, and there are periods of public comment and discussions and revisions. It takes time. Public airing of discussion, of comments, of feedback, of issues. Here, even though the states did participate this time, like 20 states, I think, had significant groups, significant being 2, 3, 4 people in the group, it's really never went through public vetting. And they got, as Sandy said, terrible review, really. It was like C, also grade by the scientists. So beware, because there is a push for them, because there is some stake and buy-in, but they really should go through very tough scrutiny, as the other ones should have, but they never did.
I would also add that people have to think about the relationship between mathematics and science at the high school level. The kind of mathematics standards you have and when you offer them help to determine what kind of science courses can be taught. Anyone who has taught physics knows that if it's a full-year civics course in grade 11 or 12, kids have had to have completed a certain amount of algebra to be able to do it. So the two need to be meshed together in some way. And one of the complaints about these science standards was how little they had to say about the mathematics that was needed for doing these science standards.
That's very true. There was a lot of talk about description and understanding phenomena, but there was essentially zero about what students should be able to do mathematically, analytically with the science. Maybe that's why chemistry was taken away, because balancing equation is basic algebra. It's not funny. It's talking again about the phenomena, which is not bad. It's important to understand scientific phenomena. But also, beyond talking, you want students to be able to understand and analyze them using mathematics. And that is completely missing in these new science standards.
I'm also going to say really quickly, when I heard from our State Department of Education, we were told that we were only going to be adopting the English language arts and the math standards. Now, several states said that in the beginning and then changed their minds. So we'll have to wait and see what Idaho decides. But as of this point, we don't know that they're adopting the science standards.
Let's just stop.
But of course, you may want to strengthen whatever science standards you have. So this is not necessarily saying that the status quo is adequate.
That's right.
So there should be a way of involving your higher ed faculty in this state in making some commentary. They should have some stake and investment in what kinds of higher or more advanced science and math courses are in your high schools. That, to me, would be a very legitimate thing for a legislature to be interested in.
Interestingly, one of the items on the petition that we have is to ask for them to convene a committee of educators, no doubt, to seek alternatives, better standards from other sources, whether they collaborate with other states, whether they take, to generate them here. That is one of the things we're asking for. We're asking for a lot, by the way. I'm not sure we're going to get it all, but if you haven't signed the online petition yet, if you're convinced that we want to try and stand against this, I would suggest that you visit the Idahoans for localeducation.com. There's a link on there for a petition. You'll find it on the 912 website as well. It's just all the same petition. I think we are at 960 signatures so far on that. It's not a referendum type thing, and that it doesn't meet the criteria of legal petition, but it is a show of the opinions out there.
I would like to add that you do have to make sure that the academic experts or content experts you get are experts in that content. They're not pedagogical people, but actually are content experts. And legislators may not always know. I had an argument with a school committee member in Brookline who was a banking commissioner in Massachusetts, and I said, you need a mathematician to help you look at your math standards for Brookline High School. And he said to me, what is a mathematician? And I thought, what kind of a question is that from this very highly educated person?
It's not math education.
Yeah, because he said, we have someone in charge who has a PhD in math education. And I said, that is not a mathematician, but they think that someone with a PhD necessarily is an expert, even if it's in curriculum and instruction in a particular content area. So there are pitfalls all over the place in order to get the kinds of people who know how to look at the content of a mathematics document or a science document, I can't. That's why I go to people I know who can.
I think we're out of time for the day. I do want to make a brief announcement about the video that we're recording. Our goal is to have that uploaded on a website where you can share it with others who weren't able to attend today. We're not sure if it's going to be YouTube or an independent website or both. I think the other thing that we will do, we will make an attempt to burn DVDs if you actually want to have one. Look for some follow-up on the front page of our website, 912projectidaho.com. We will make an announcement when and where that information is available. And we very much appreciate you coming to join us today. I hope it was informative. It certainly was for us. And I thank our presenters, just immensely for their time that they dedicated to this.